Okay, we are being live streamed, and so welcome back to the ongoing public hearings of the Environment and Transportation Committee. I am the chairman, Kumar Barve. I'm joined by my vice chairman, Dana Stein, and my happy group of environmental and transportation experts on my committee. We are being joined for the first bill by three members of the Economic Matters Committee, Veronica Turner, Pam Queen, and Seth Howard. And the order of the bills is going to again be in numerical order. So the first bill will be Delegate Boyce's bill, House Bill 18. Then we'll have Delegate Frazier Hidalgo's bill, House Bill 60. And the last bill of the afternoon will be House Bill 195, Delegate Clark. And with that, we will start the public hearing. Regina, you've got the floor. 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will not take 4 minutes, but I will be brief, as I know there are other individuals here to testify. I am, for the record, Regina T. Boyce, Delegate Regina T. Boyce, here to testify on HB 18, the Maryland Stewardship Program. This program is incredibly familiar to you all, as you've passed it two committees and two sessions in a row, and I'm hoping to get your favorable report. As you know, HB 18 establishes the paint care program in Maryland. There are currently 11 established programs across the country: California, Colorado, Connecticut, DC, Maine, Minnesota, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, and the city for which I was born, DC. If passed again, Maryland will be the 12th established program in the country. Last year's HB 127 and as HB 890 in 2020. This committee passes legislation as well as the House. And it made its way over to the Senate. So 10% of all purchased paint in the US, about 78 million gallons per year, goes unused. According to the Paint Stewardship Institute, it costs more than $500 million to manage end-of-life paint in the US, an average of what they see as $8 per gallon to recycle. About 80% of that, 10% of paint, can be recycled into new paint. Created by the American Coatings Association, paint manufacturers, Paint Care's nationwide goal is to decrease paint waste and recycle more post-consumer paint by setting up drop-off locations in each state. The program is funded by a fee placed on each container of paint sold in the state that is between a pint and 5 gallons. The fee fully funds the program, including the yearly independent audit. Paint Care partners with paint and hardware stores, as well as solid waste household hazardous programs to identify and create voluntary drop-off sites throughout the year. Partnerships with HHW programs and government collection programs reduce yearly costs in transportation, recycling, and proper disposal. Post-consumer paint is more often than not the #1 product by volume and cost coming into these HHW programs nationwide. The US has 119 extended producer responsibility laws on 14 products in 33 states and DC. EPR products include items such as batteries and mattresses, medications, carpets, e-products, and syringes. The bill before you today is again another example of an EPR law requesting establishment in Maryland for paint recycling. Thank you for your time and your consideration, and I urge a favorable report again for HB 18. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Boyce. Before I go on to the other supporting witnesses, remind me again, Regina, where the bill got hung up.
It got hung up on the floor. My testimony is incorrect. It should be second reader. It got hung up on second reader on the floor in the Senate.
So it did get out of committee. What committee Absolutely. Did it go to?
It went to EHE.
Okay. Okay, great. And who's the Senate cross-file?
Senator West.
Okay, so let me go to all the witnesses who are supporting the bill, and then we'll entertain questions. Actually, I'll do all the witnesses, including the one opponent, and then we'll go to questions. So the first witness is Kristin Oldendorf with the Baltimore City Department of Public Works. Kristin, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Vice Chair, members of the committee, I'm really happy to be here today and appreciate this opportunity to support this legislation. This paint care bill is really important for the environment and for our efforts around waste diversion. Today, I'm testifying in my capacity as Chief of the Office of Support Services for the Baltimore City Department of Public Works Bureau of Solid Waste. Baltimore City supports this bill as we really value its goal of increasing opportunities to recycle paint. And it's really important.
Hold on, stop the timer, and somebody needs to mute themselves. Well, okay, go ahead, Kristin. I'll give you a few extra seconds.
Thank you. So yes, Baltimore City imports this bill. We appreciate all opportunities to divert waste, and this bill would help do that. It's also important to ensure that some of these materials, special oil-based paint and other products, are disposed of properly, so they're not going down our drains, they're not going in the regular trash. Baltimore City does host household hazardous waste events for residents. That's from April until October, once a month. And paint, especially oil-based paint and like materials, are very popular items that people bring in. And last year we collected about 23,500 pounds of paint at these events. But that cost is coming out of the city budget. In addition, we accept latex paint in the regular trash, but we ask, obviously that residents dry it out before it goes in. But in that way, it is, we still have a cost of collecting that material and a cost of disposing of it, and it's going in the trash and not being reused or recycled in any way, unfortunately. Also, during the months when we don't have household hazardous waste events, residents often have difficulty finding, where to dispose of this material. Actually, just this morning, a resident reached out to me asking where he could bring 5 gallons of latex paint. He was actually hoping to donate it. So the legislation in question would increase those opportunities, would give residents more options, hopefully make it easier for them, to have somewhere to bring these material and not just have it collecting in their basement or end up getting dumped somewhere. So this would really be beneficial for Baltimore as a local government and beneficial to the residents we serve to have a paint stewardship program in place to support the collection and recycling of this material. And the type of paint stewardship program proposed by this bill has a successful track record in many other states, as discussed, and we'd really welcome such a program in Maryland. So thank you for the opportunity to support this bill. I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you very much. Next is Scott Cassell with the Product Stewardship Institute. Scott, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes. Scott?
I'm here. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I just deleted the testimony here. Can I just come back in line after the next person? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we'll go. That's fine. We'll go to Pam Kitsmiller. Pam, you're on. 2 minutes.
Hello, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Pam Kitsmiller. Nice to see you, or whatever it is we call it these days. But here, very pleased to talk about our support, or the support for the paint stewardship bill. As Delegate Boyd said, this has been before the committee, but there are some new members and others. And I think also I wanted to take this opportunity to maybe address some confusion and issues that are raised by people wondering about this program. So one becomes the tax issue, which is what was the debatable issue on the floor of the Senate. This is not a tax. This is before it's clearly identified. It's like a management assessment fee. It's identified at the retail when you buy it, and you get a lot of information with it. The bill requires the provision of information to consumers. So for instance, how much paint do you really need to buy? I mean, if you can save buying not as much paint is so you don't have any left over, that's a big savings. It includes information on where you can take it when you're done painting. It also includes the provision of bulk pickups, which is a big deal for contractors and others. That's free. The bulk pickup program is free. So there's a lot of pieces to this and managing this material. The other thing you should know, as you can well imagine, is we're talking about EPR generally. This is a particular product. It's not in the normal waste stream, and it's problematic to manage both for the local governments and for individuals who end up having cans in their basement and everything else. So it's a very targeted program. But the other thing I wanted to remind everybody is while it is run by a producer responsibility program, MDE still has a lot of oversight and authority. They have to file a program plan that actually has to be approved by the department.
Okay, if you can start to wrap up. If you can start to wrap up the committee.
Okay, and they have to file annual audited statements to make sure that the money matches up. So you don't see what you see in government programs where you see these large funds build up because they're not used. Every year that has to be approved. So thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Cassell, are you ready?
I'm ready. Yes,
okay, go for it.
Sorry about that.
That's fine.
All right.
2 minutes.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Scott Cassell. I'm the CEO and founder of the Product Stewardship Institute, and I'm here in strong support of HB 18. I want to thank Delegate Boyce for sponsoring this bill. Our organization is a 20-year-old national nonprofit with membership from 47 state environmental agencies and hundreds of local governments. And I personally worked with the paint industry and many other stakeholders for 4 years to negotiate a model agreement that was signed in 2007 by the paint industry, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, multiple state and local governments, and paint recyclers. And the model that we developed is the basis for all the laws that Delegate Boyce had mentioned, that as well as the basis for HB 18. Maryland residents generate 1.3 million gallons of leftover paint each year. And most of this paint, unfortunately, is disposed in the trash, down the drain, in storm drains, because government just cannot afford the millions of dollars per year to collect and manage it. So enacting HB 18 would provide up to $12 million of financial benefits to Maryland municipalities. That would be the cost to manage all the paint. It establishes convenient locations for drop-off year-round, increased reuse and recycling of paint, up to 75% for both of those, protects Maryland water bodies and other natural resources, reduces greenhouse gas impacts. You don't need to make that paint again if you can reuse and recycle it, and supports recycling sector jobs. Our organization evaluated several of the paint care programs around the country and found widespread support and very much enthusiasm among retailers, municipalities, and consumers. So for those reasons, our organization strongly supports it and encourages you to pass this out of committee.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Next, we'll listen to Heidi Mcauliffe with the American Coatings Association. Heidi, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the committee, and Delegate Boyce. Thank you for your leadership. ACA and the coatings industry supports this bill 100%. We really hope that Maryland will join the 11 other states that have passed this legislation. We're anxious to bring paint stewardship to Maryland residents, to provide free, convenient collection opportunities for leftover architectural paint, significant cost savings for counties and municipalities, and the environmental benefits of cleaner water that will result from diverting this waste stream from landfills. So cleaning out your basement or your garage becomes so much easier when you can take it to a local retailer without paying any fees. ACA's Paint Stewardship Program makes this a reality by expanding the number of collection sites to include retail stores. There are over 2,000 collection locations in our 11 stewardship states. About 1,600 of those locations are retail stores that volunteer to be collection sites. And they believe that they volunteer because they believe that becoming a collection site is a value-added service for their customers and that it has increased foot traffic in their stores. This program is zero cost to the state of Maryland. It's operated by our stewardship organization, Paint Care. Paint Care services are supported by a nominal fee on the sale of new paint at retail, which ensures the sustainability of the program. And there's no cost to the state, as Paint Care will pay for the oversight and compliance services of the environmental agency. Authorizing legislation is necessary to begin our work in Maryland in order to prevent any anti-competition violations and to provide a level playing field for manufacturers, distributors, and retailers. Since 2010, when we started this program, we've collected over 54 million gallons of leftover paint, both solvent and latex, and we've diverted about 90% from landfills using EPA's hierarchy of highest and best use. This program is a win-win for Maryland. We urge a favorable report.
Thank you very much, Heidi. Next, we will hear from Martha Ainsworth with the Maryland Sierra Club. Martha, welcome back to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Barve, and good afternoon, committee members. I'm Martha Ainsworth, Chair of the Maryland Sierra Club Zero Waste Team, speaking with strong support of HB 18 on behalf of the 70,000 members and supporters of the Maryland Sierra Club. 18 counties and Baltimore offer paint collection and recycling to residents, but often it's not convenient. It's at a central location or only a few days per year. 5 counties offer no paint collection or recycling at all. Paint Stewardship program will make manufacturers responsible for collection, reuse, recycling, and disposal of leftover paint. It's an effective program already operational in 10 states and Washington, D.C., educating the public and improving the convenience of returning leftover paint through participating retailers. It'll increase the collection, reuse, and recycling of leftover paint in every Maryland county. Counties that currently offer paint collection would save tens of thousands of dollars annually. All counties would save the cost of landfilling or incinerating paint that's put in the trash. Program is financed by an assessment on each can of paint sold. The assessment may not exceed the cost of running the program. The producers and consumers of paint finance this program, not taxpayers. The program will be subject to public accountability and oversight. As mentioned, the stewardship program plan must be approved by MDE, and MDE must review and approve annual reports and independent audits. To allow for the program to improve over time as lessons are learned, we do recommend a small amendment would require the plan renewal every 5 years or whenever there's a change in the assessment or if required by MDE to give it more flexibility. A renewable plan is a standard feature of recent stewardship programs, and it will increase public oversight and effectiveness of the program. And with to conclude, the Sierra Club respectfully requests a favorable report on HB 18. The third time is the charm, delicate voice.
Okay, thank you very much. It appears that that's all the folks who wanted to testify. The one opponent only submitted written testimony. So I actually have a question for Heidi Mcauliffe. Heidi, so the fee that's going to be charged at the point of sale is basically going to be set by an industry-run organization, right?
That's correct, Chairman.
So you have an incentive to keep that fee as low as possible so you can sell more paint, right?
Absolutely. Paint manufacturers are very interested in keeping that fee as low and as efficient as possible.
Very good. Okay, we've got a question. Let me just make sure I have the order correct. Delegate Wyville has a question. You need to unmute yourself, Will.
Yeah, I know the space bar is not working today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the recycler is specified in the legislation, correct? The nonprofit?
Well, the product stewardship organization is referred to in the statute, yes.
Referred to, meaning they're designated, correct?
Well, the way the law is written is it requires paint manufacturers to participate in a stewardship organization. So paint manufacturers have developed this organization to do that work. And throughout our history, we've never had a paint manufacturer decide to set up their own organization.
All right, so basically it's a monopoly, the way I understand monopoly. So what incentive is there to keep costs down?
The incentive is that our manufacturers don't want to see the price of paint increase exponentially. They want to keep that fee as low as possible. So we work very hard to keep our services as efficient and focused as possible to maintain a low fee.
Okay, and which of our adjoining states have this program in place?
Currently, the only adjoining program is the District of Columbia.
Okay.
And there are 10 other states across the country.
And do we have an estimate of the fee, how much per gallon or whatever it would be?
I can tell you that the fee per gallon ranges, across the 11 programs. It ranges from 75 cents to 99 cents per gallon. It's lower for a smaller container, higher for a larger container.
Right. Okay, thank you.
All right, next question goes to Delegate Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess Heidi, you would be the best one to ask this question. Most of the testimony today was really zeroed in more on retail. I would call it like basically small homeowner type users that have paint, perhaps partial gallons left in their basement or in their closets or whatever for recycling. And I've always brought this point up in these hearings that this cost would also be applied to contractors as well. Is that correct?
Yes, the fee on paint definitely is. It's applied
Because-
to every sale of architectural
Right,
paint.
because contractors are, I don't think they're going to be turning much paint in. They use it on the job or they use it on the next one for the most part. And what's concerning me right now is at least in my district, paint is really still in short supply from basically
Yeah.
Sherwin-Williams specifically has said it's based on the problems that were in Texas last year with the freezing and whatnot, that they can't produce the products quick enough. So in my district specifically, we're faced with short supply and high prices, and this would just add an additional fee on top of that problem that we're having in my district. And I just don't think the timing is good for such a move, and especially on the contractor side. I mean, I'd be willing to vote for something that was strictly on the retail side, but on the contractor side, I just think it's problematic, and especially right now. What say you?
A couple of things, Delegate Jacobs. Paint contractors are one of the largest users of this program across the country. They do have leftover inventory, and some of them have a very large leftover inventory. So we've actually, because of the large inventory generated by painting contractors, we developed what we call our large volume pickup program. So for any folks that have over 100 gallons of leftover paint, which is a lot of painting contractors, we will send a transporter to their location and pick up that leftover paint so that they don't even have to transport it anywhere. We do that free of charge. That's included in the 75 cents that they will pay for this service. And we've had a very good reception from paint contractors across the country about this large volume pickup program. We also service folks like schools, hospitals, prisons, hotels, any other institutional type of organization that has a large inventory of leftover paint. We will do the same thing. So that's one comment I would make. The other comment I'd make is Sherwin-Williams is one of the largest manufacturers in the United States. They are one of our largest members, and they are on our board of directors for this program. They've been 100% supportive of the program. The entire paint industry is definitely experiencing some supply chain issues, and you're absolutely correct about the storm down in Texas being part of the problem. But the whole idea that we're collecting this material to be used as feedstock actually should help the supply chain issue. One of the goals of the program is to assist the recycling industry in creating recycled content paint. So we're doing that with this program and working with processors.
I've made one follow-up, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely.
You mentioned in your testimony that there was a fee for, I think, for gallons and a higher fee for larger amounts. Was that 5-gallon containers is a higher per gallon fee? Is that what you meant by that?
It's per container. So for the fee for a 5-gallon container is anywhere from $1 $1.65 to $1.99
For the whole 5 gallons or per gallon?
for the whole 5
The
gallons.
whole 5 gallons. And Delegate Jacobs, again, Heidi just mentioned quote unquote 75 cents as she was using it as an example, but there is no fee determined because the fee needs to be determined by the volumes of paint sold in the state, and then the fee will be calculated then, and that's a part of the process of when the plan is in creation after the bill has been successfully passed. So,
But the estimate right now is 75 cents to 99 cents.
that's her range. That's the range she's just stating.
It's an estimate right now.
Yeah. I mean, it could be 69 cents for all we know. I don't know. She's stating the range across the state. But again, if more volumes are sold, it may be a little less or a little more. But I just want to be clear that there is no specific cost. She was just providing the range.
I understand. But
yes,
I thank you for that. And just I want to make certain that we're on the same page. Heidi, you acknowledge the fact that there is some paint shortage still going on, and the price of paint's been a little high based on that. Would you agree with that?
Would I agree with the statement that the price of paint is high right now?
It's higher based on the fact that there's a shorter supply.
I'm sorry, I'm not really prepared to comment on the price of paint.
Okay, well, you could call my stores over in Kent County and Sherwin-Williams, and I think check on the price of paint, and you would get the answer to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The Vice Chairman has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Delegate Boyce, you may have said this already, but just to confirm, this bill is in the exact same posture as the bill that we passed last year?
Yes, sir, with the exception of course, those date changes.
Right.
Date changes, yes, absolutely, same posture.
Great, thank you.
I actually have a follow-up question for Heidi based on the question that Delegate Jacobs had, and it's this. Is the price per volume the same regardless of the size of the container, or if you bring in a larger container, do you get a slight volume discount on the price per volume, or what happens in other states?
So the way the program works is when a consumer buys a can of paint, the fee is added to that can of paint, whether if it's a 1 gallon, the fee ranges between 75 and 99 cents. If it's a 5 gallon, it ranges between $1.65 and $1.99. But after you go home and you finish your painting project, if you have 2 gallons of paint left and they've only got a half, they're half full, you can bring those gallons back to the paint store.
No, let me ask the question a little more clearly. So if I buy a 1 gallon can of paint, let's say I'm just going to use simple numbers here. Let's say the fee is $1 for a 1 gallon container. If I also buy a 5 gallon container, will the fee be $5 or will it be less than $5? Will there be a slight quantity discount for buying a larger container, or is it the same?
The fee schedule is set based upon the size of the container. So a 1 gallon container, if you buy 10 1 gallon containers, you're going to pay that fee on every single gallon. If you buy 1 5 gallon container, you're going to pay the 5 gallon container fee, which ranges between $1.65 and $1.99.
All right, let me ask the question.
Mr. Chair, I think I know what you're asking.
Yeah, is the fee on 5 1 gallon containers going to be the same as the fee on 1 5 gallon container?
No, sir. So the way this works is that a pint or more up to 5 gallons will each have a separate fee. So let's say a gallon of paint costs $13.50. The store sells it to me for whole numbers here, $14, because the fee assessed was 50 cents. So now I'm going to pay $14 for that gallon. But then I also pick up a 5 gallon bucket of cream paint because I've got some place. That fee, let's say, is $150 for that 5 gallon. And the fee is for a 5 gallon is let's say it's $1.50. So now I'm going to pay $151.50 for that 5 gallon of paint.
So it's a little bit of a discount for a larger container.
Absolutely. So it's not per gallon, it is per container.
Okay. Pam Queen has a question. Delegate Queen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question based on some of the dialogues that we were having regarding something I thought I heard in the testimony that is no fee for bulk pickup, so contractors wouldn't be really impacted by that. So can someone help to explain that to me? So when I buy it, I buy, a couple of 5 gallons because I'm painting a lot in my house. I pay some fee. I think you were saying maybe between $1 and $1.65 because it's on the container and based upon how much paint we use. But if I'm and this is so it goes into the fund. So when they pick up this extra paint, that helps to, support that effort. If I'm a contractor and I don't pay bulk fees, how does that fit in? Can you kind of explain that to me?
So there is no fee on any consumer or a painting contractor or anybody else who brings in leftover architectural paint. So bringing back the product to be managed, there is no fee whatsoever. The only fee that's imposed is when a consumer purchases a new can of paint. Does that answer your question, Delegate Queen?
No, I think that's why I'm getting confused. The fee or what we're assessing is so that when we can bring it back, you have a way of processing it, right? That's why we get the fee when we purchased a new one.
Correct.
Correct.
So the fee is collected from a consumer, but actually the fee is paid initially by manufacturers, and they send that fee to Paint Care. And that's the revenue that runs the Paint Care program so that we can provide these services. That's the only revenue for the Paint Care program. That fee is paid by consumers when they purchase the paint. But when they bring back leftover paint to be managed, there's no fee for that activity. Paint Care already has the revenue so that they can provide the transportation and the processing for that collected material.
And so contractors can call someone that'll pick it all up for them, bulk fee, at freely.
Correct.
And then if I'm a person in my home, I can't call somebody to pick it up. I take it to a store. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. And that's because paint contractors typically have a large volume of leftover paint.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Howard has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Aren't we already recycling? I'm looking at this on Google. Aren't many jurisdictions, if not all jurisdictions in Maryland, already recycling paint at their as like paint drop-offs at their current landfills?
That is correct, but it's only once a year, or some like Baltimore City maybe has it twice or quarterly, and it is at a cost to that jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. So this would help. I think the best testimony to read, Delegate, would be the testimony from Baltimore City, where they talk about the cost in managing those programs, the volume of paint they tend to go, as Kristin testified to, but it alleviates those costs. So yes, they have them, but if there is an ability to have more access to be able to drop this off at, your local hardware store down the street, it's easier for our jurisdictions to then either can manage it less, manage it with, or not manage it at all.
And I mean, why not? So I understand what you're saying, and I think I understand where you're trying to go with this. I appreciate it, but why not run it like the battery core exchange?
I'm not familiar with the battery.
So we have lead acid batteries in Maryland, NiCad batteries in Maryland. People pay a deposit when they purchase those batteries, and when they return those batteries, they get that deposit back.
So then what happens to the stuff? Like, I don't understand.
They recycle it. The businesses recycle it. I got to look a little more into it, Delegate, but it's just I didn't know if maybe you would explore that. I mean, it seems like a recycling program for lead acid batteries.
But the difference here is that we have products that are also reusable, right? So those batteries aren't reusable. These products, the majority of them are reusable, whereas a smaller percentage of them then has to be appropriately disposed of. A lot of the material are actually reusable.
Okay. Well, and
I think that's the slight difference in the program that you're speaking of. But what I hear you're saying is that we already have something, and this feels duplicative to you.
No, it feels like we have something at our state landfills. And I understand where you're trying to go with the collection, but I guess I'm just looking at a different way of structuring it. So I'll have to do a little more research. Again, I was just looking.
No problem.
7 minutes on Google at this, and I just found out this abundance of information on batteries recycling, paint recycling, local jurisdictions taking action on these things. So I look forward to talking with you a little bit more about it.
Absolutely. You know where I live.
Yeah. Thanks.
Delegate, no, that was Delegate Howard. Okay, it looks like there are no further questions. And if that's the case, thank you one and all. That concludes the public hearing on this bill. We will now go to House Bill 60, Delegate Frazier Dalgo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Vice Chair and members of the committee for your indulgence on House Bill 60. This is the first time you're hearing this bill. According to data from Maryland Motor Vehicle Administration, over 285,000 new vehicles were sold in the state last year, or in 2020, I'm sorry. Some of these sales were of high polluting vehicles, which are vehicles that have a carbon dioxide tailpipe emissions levels of 400 grams per mile or higher. Greenhouse gas emissions have lasting and often deadly consequences on pollution and health, according to the Maryland Department of Environment. And I testified on this on a different bill a couple of days ago. In 2018, there were over 29,534 asthma-related emergency room visits last year in the state of Maryland. That is 52.5 per 10,000 residents. Among children, the numbers are even more startling. Up to 5 years old, the ER visit was 119.4 per 10,000. This cost the state over $27 billion in healthcare costs. I think it's important to start to really hammer home, and I'm going to continue to do this on a lot of these pollution type bills and electric vehicle bills, the crossroads of public health, and we're not doing that enough. And I want to make sure people get that. It's in my testimony. I can go in more detail, but you have it. There is a direct correlation between burning fossil fuels in your cars and little kids having asthma, getting asthma, and going to the emergency room. That's just what it is. I'm introducing HB 60 to ensure that drivers who choose to buy new high polluting vehicles have to pay literally and figuratively for the harmful impacts these vehicles have on the environment, our residents, and particularly our children. The bill establishes a one-time registration fee on new motor vehicles sold registered in Maryland with carbon dioxide tailpipe emissions equivalent to or higher than 400 grams per mile, starting in the 2023 model year. The vehicle is based on the EPA's, the Environmental Protection Agency's greenhouse gas rating, which is a 10-point scale. Vehicles that score a 10 are the cleanest, and vehicles that score a 1 are the dirtiest. And you have it in my testimony, the chart. It's also on the EPA website. Using the chart that you see, you can see what the costs are. It could be anywhere from $450 to $250, depending on the type of vehicle which is purchased. This is only on newly purchased vehicles in the state of Maryland. It does not go retroactive. It does not go retroactive, and it grandfathers all the vehicles that have already been purchased. And with that, I'm happy to pass it back to the chair if you want to have others testify on it. I do want to. Sorry.
No, I was going to say we'll have the proponents testify. We'll take questions, and then we'll hear from the opponents.
Okay. And again, I want to just reiterate, as I said before, because I think it's extraordinarily important, the connection of public health here. We're not just talking about the environment and climate change, which we are talking about as well, but we are specifically talking about emergency room visits for our citizens and public health dollars and deaths that are occurring. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Next, we'll hear from Andrew Frazier. Andrew, welcome back to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Barvé, and thank you, Delegate Frazier Hidalgo, for putting this legislation forward. I think in light of the failure of Congress to get their bill through, that we need to really work on the local level to do what we can do. I think this bill is excellent. And for those who are wondering about this, from what I understand, the bill doesn't start until 2023. And I did a look at the website, the EPA website, on the typical cars that people might buy. And a car, even like a minivan, like a Toyota Sienna, even this year's model or last year's model, is efficient enough that you wouldn't have to pay a fee. On the other hand, high polluting cars, really big trucks, SUVs, things like that, they do pollute more, and they would be the ones that would be paying this kind of fee. And I think that's fair, and that's the way it should be. There are lots of opportunities, lots of options out there for people to purchase cars that don't pollute, that are even gas cars. So that's my take on it. Again, this is extraordinarily important from a number of factors, as Delegate Frazier Hidalgo mentioned, the health factors and the fact that on a national level, we don't seem to be getting anywhere on this. And I'm hoping we can do something on the local level. Thanks again for your foresight and your efforts on this bill.
Thank you. Let's next go to Wanda Ashley Williams. Ms. Williams, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
I believe she's the only witness missing today.
Okay, let's go to questions. Any questions for the sponsor and and Andrew Frazier? Any questions? Delegate Healy has a question. And you need to unmute yourself. And there you go.
Okay, thank you very much. And I just want to ask this question to get the response on the record. I just think that one of the concerns that is about the impact on people who can't afford, or they're stretched to get any kind of car, and to add additional charges because they can't afford a more efficient car. How is that dealt with? If you have I just want the sponsor to respond, that's fine.
Delegate Healy, thank you so much for the question, because I kind of missed that in my presentation. So thank you. Look, this 2 things. One, there's an amendment to the bill to clarify and make it a little easier to figure out the formula. So there's an amendment that you all should have. That's number 1. Number 2, this applies to brand newly purchased vehicles. The vehicles we're talking about are the Lexus LX 570, the Toyota Land Cruiser, the Toyota Sequoia, Nissan Armada, GMC Yukon XL, Mercedes GLS, Toyota 4Runner, Nissan. They're really big, heavy vehicles. It's a one-time fee, and the average cost of those vehicles is upwards of $70,000.
Okay.
So really, this is yes, Delegate. This is really going after those folks that have a significant amount of disposable income, and it just helps to kind of write the formula. I also have to say that, like of the previous bill I had a couple of days ago, the revenues that come out of this go to the Strategic Energy Investment Fund and are earmarked specifically for electric vehicles to help transition the states, all the citizens of the state that own cars, to electric. So that there's a point that the money goes specifically toward cleaning up air pollution and dealing with public health. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question goes to Delegate Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So DFH, I'm kind of curious. You answered one of my questions a bit on specifically what vehicles are you talking about? And I think you named a few of them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have a question about commercial vehicles used for transporting goods.
Yes.
That's kind of a loose statement because, my definition of commercial vehicles used for transporting goods may be different than yours. So could you expand on that definition a little bit?
Sure, it's a little loose here to give a little bit of understanding. I think the Department of Transportation or the Department of Environment is tasked with helping to kind of create that specific definition. If that's something you want to narrow down a little bit more on in subcommittee, I'm happy to do so. Again, this is the first year introducing this bill, and yeah, so again, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Environment should be able to define that. I understand it is a little loose, but I think we can figure that out. And again, if you want an amendment, if you need an amendment on there to make you more comfortable, we can play with language and try and figure out what that looks like.
I appreciate that. So you mentioned a few of those, I guess you call them large SUVs, or how about like pickup trucks that are used by contractors that are delivering products to their job sites, materials, etc. Are you considering those vehicles under this legislation?
Yeah, so that is a great question, and that completely depends on the vehicle. For example, the Ford F-150 has such a broad breadth, as I'm sure you know, of vehicles, right? They have the F-150 and they, have different size engines. Some of those engines are more polluting than others. So for like the Ford F-150, I don't think the Ford F-150 would qualify here because the kinds of vehicles they have are so broad that they don't fit in the first 5 categories. And so as time goes, depending on what manufacturer is producing and what they clarify as a Sierra or what they clarify as a Ford F-150 or a Silverado or a Tundra, they may or they may not fall into it. My belief is that, for example, the #1 selling truck in the country, which I think is the Ford F-150, upwards of 650 or 700,000 a year, because of the diverse range of powertrains, that Ford F-150 would not qualify, so they would not be charged. Some of the other vehicles might.
So you're saying that the Ford F-150 would not fall under this, under the fee portion of this bill? Is that what I'm just trying?
Yeah, they don't qualify in the first 5 categories 1 through 5. And again, that's because the diversity of that vehicle. There's so many different powertrains that they meet the minimum standards.
Okay.
That might not be for all pickup trucks, but the Ford F-150 is my understanding.
So you don't know about GMC or Chevrolet or Dodge or any of those?
I don't know, but we could, if you'd like to spend some time, we could go to the EPA website. They classify it right on the EPA website. So we'd know pretty quickly which vehicles do and which vehicles don't. But again, it's taken at the fleet of that vehicle. So however you define that Silverado or however you define that Tundra, but in particular, like the Ford F-150, there are just so many variants, right?
Yeah.
So they do a really great job of diversifying their efficiencies.
Yeah, I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Well, it appears I mistakenly skipped over one of the witnesses, so I'm going to call up Susan Nerlinger right now, and keep your hands up for questions. I'll recognize you in the order in which your hands were up. Ms. Nerlinger, I'm very sorry I skipped over you by mistake. Welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Susan Nerlinger. I'm a member of the Maryland chapter of the Sierra Club and a resident of Olney, Maryland. The Maryland Sierra Club strongly supports HB 60, which would authorize the Department of the Environment to impose a one-time pollution fee on certain new passenger vehicles and light trucks sold or registered in the state. The pollution fee would be based on the volume of carbon dioxide tailpipe exhaust emitted by the vehicles. That is the CO2 that comes directly out of the tailpipe of a car, for example, and into the atmosphere, with the most polluting vehicles incurring the highest fee. The money collected from the fee would be deposited in the Maryland Strategic Energy Investment Fund and used for 3 purposes. 1, to provide rebates on the purchases of electric vehicles. Funds for rebates for EV purchases ran out in about 2020, I believe, in Maryland. It would also fund the purchase of electric public transit and school buses. And finally, it would fund the expansion of EV charging infrastructure. The fee would be $450 for vehicles that pollute the most and $250 for those that pollute the least. These are tiny fractions of the purchase price of the vehicles. As I'm sure we all know, the transportation sector is the largest contributor to Maryland's climate damaging greenhouse gas emissions. So arguably, it is where we should direct most of our effort to reduce them. The pollution fee proposed by HB 60 would in part provide the money needed to fund the transition to electric vehicles by providing rebates for EVs and improving and expanding access to EV charging infrastructure. In addition, the fee would offer some incentive, albeit a regrettably small one, for people to purchase more fuel-efficient vehicles. I wish to bring the committee's attention to a report that was produced by McKinsey, one of the world's most influential business consulting firms and hardly a radical organization. I happened across the story of the McKinsey report in the British Guardian newspaper, January 25th, 2022. I think it provides a great statement of where we are, as well as the truth.
If you could start to wrap up your testimony, the committee will appreciate that.
All right, and in that light of that, because the pollution fee enacted would help fund the much needed transition to EVs and perhaps serve as a small incentive to people to buy more fuel efficient, less polluting vehicles, the Sierra Club supports its passage. Thank you for giving me the time to speak.
Okay, Delegate Weigel has a question. Delegate Weigel?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the bill sponsor, and I know Ms. Nerlinger just threw out some numbers there, but using one of the examples you gave out there, I guess the Toyota Land Cruiser or whatever, could you kind of give us an idea of what someone would be paying in total? I know the fee's $1.25 times whatever they admit, but do you have an example of whether it would be, what that translates to, whether it's $200, $400, $500?
Yes, absolutely, Delegate. And again, there's an amendment on the bill because that $1.25, the original bill was just a little bit confusing. So we did an amendment on the bill to make it just much more simple to come up with that. If you see on my testimony, I think it's the third or fourth page of my testimony, you can see the ratings. It's a rating of 1 through 10. If you are within the first 5 ratings, it's stipulated exactly what you'll pay. So at rating number 5, it's $250.
Okay.
At rating number 4, it's $300. At rating number 3, it's $350. At rating number 2, it's $400. And at rating number 1, it's $450. That one-time fee, and that's for upwards of $659 per mile, CO2 per mile. And again, the vehicles are brand new vehicles, and the vehicles of this size are, upwards of $60,000-$70,000. So the most somebody's going to pay is $450, and that's not a lot if you're tracking it on to the cost of, let's say, a Chevy Suburban, which is a $70,000 vehicle, or it could be as little as $250. So,
all right. Thanks for clarifying that. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for just giving me an opportunity to illustrate the amendment again. I know it's a little bit confusing, so thank you for that.
Delegate Clark has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is for the delegate, the bill sponsor. Delegate, I was looking at the list of vehicles that you say that may not be assessed the type. Now, these are just new vehicles you're talking about?
Yes, sir. These would be just brand new vehicles starting in the 2023 model year.
Okay, well, and I was just curious, you have public transportation vehicles, ambulances, and state, county, and municipal vehicles would be exempt.
Right.
I guess if we're trying to encourage the municipalities and school buses and the state to buy electric vehicles, why would we exempt them? You talk about people that buy higher-end cars. It's not a big deal for them to pay it, and it's just a one-time fee. Am I correct?
It is just a one-time fee. Yes.
Yeah. So why shouldn't these transportation vehicles and government vehicles be assessed that if they're brand new?
So that's a great question, and I think it's the reason we have that in the bill is because it's a complicated answer. For example, if you're looking at ambulances or buses, in some cases there aren't, or agricultural vehicles, there aren't equivalent lower emitting vehicles yet. That is going to change in the near future. So that's one reason. And the other part, if you see on line 16, page 2, it says these vehicles may not be assessed the following types of motor vehicles, and it lists them, and it also says state or county municipalities on or before July 2029, the Department of Transportation shall review the exemptions under this paragraph of this in the subsection going to the next page may recommend the secretary modify the elimination of these exemptions. So it allows for them, but it also allows for the Secretary of Transportation to make modifications. So it leaves it open as vehicles become more available. And when they are, then they can, it allows for some flexibility in the bill. I will also say there's a significant number of other bills, as you've already heard, my state fleet bill, that covers that anyway. So I think it's a great question. And I think we just wanted to leave a little bit of flexibility if there's certain vehicles, let's say police vehicles, particularly trooper vehicles. I know for a lot of local police vehicles that may be just running calls for service and putting in a lower amount of mileage every day, that department for a local department may not require a specific, or there may not be an optional electric vehicle for like troopers that are on the road, sometimes 250, 200 miles, 300 miles a day. And often state troopers live in a completely different jurisdiction. So they might be driving 80 or 90 or 100 miles just to get to work. So it offers some flexibility for in those cases, which would be different than a local municipality police department, which don't require quite as much range. And so I hope that helps.
I missed the on the second page, line 1, the secretary's modification. I didn't get that far on there, but yeah, thank you. I just was curious about that. Thank you very much.
And to your point, Delegate, I think in some of those vehicles, like emergency vehicles that are out and people are around them, and traffic accidents, and there are people around those vehicles, we really want to try to clean up those vehicles as quickly as possible because they're in traffic, they're polluting a lot. So.
Yeah, I do wonder about the consumer's mindset. I mean, right now there's such a shortage in vehicles that people are paying well over list price for vehicles, and that's never been my mindset to ever do that. Wouldn't you say that's not a very good thing to do?
Well, yeah,
just to make it a question.
Well, 2 points to that, Delegate. Everybody has a different price point. Everybody has a different budget. And this is first of all, the bill doesn't go into effect until 2023, and the semiconductor problem should mostly be behind us by 2023. So that's that issue. But I agree, the cars are inflated at this point in time. Again, the bill doesn't go into effect until 2023. And number 2 is these vehicles, if you look at this basic list, or you go to the EPA website, I mean, it's not people that are financially challenged that are buying these vehicles. People that really need this vehicle for whatever reason that are financially challenged are going out on the used market and they're buying a 5 or 10-year-old one. They're not dropping $75,000 or $80,000 on a brand new vehicle. And that's all this affects of those people. And for somebody dropping 80 grand or 75 grand.
Okay, I think you answered the question. It seems like Wanda Ashley Williams has turned up, so we'll accept her testimony right now. Ms. Ashley Williams, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, and I apologize for being late. I didn't get the link until just a few minutes ago. I am Wanda Ashley Williams, Regional Director for Climate Exchange, and we have a very strong coalition, the Rebuild Maryland Coalition, that is supporting this legislation. I'm going to be very brief because you do have my testimony. I agree with the delegate concerning the health implications of pollution in our air. It is huge. According to the World Health Organization, WHO, 7 million people die every year from exposure to fine particles in polluted air. The polluted air it affects our lungs. It affects, as the delegate said, asthma. But there's more concern, more health concerns than just asthma. Strokes, heart disease, lung cancer, and yes, chronic pulmonary disease and respiratory disease, even including pneumonia. So there's a serious health effect. And as we know, when the general population gets a cold, unfortunately, there are some communities get pneumonia. And that is the frontline communities that we always try to protect when we look at improving our environment, because they're the ones that are suffering. They're the ones that are burdened from this pollution. So we want to make sure that they are protected, and protecting their health is key. It's number 1. So at this time, we support this bill. We believe that you as lawmakers, we have an opportunity to make a change, but we all play a role in cleaning up our air. And this bill is one way that we as consumers can play a part in making this change. So for those reasons, we ask for your support. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Wandra. Sorry for mispronouncing your first name. Any questions for Ms. Ashley Williams? Seeing none, I'll move to the opponents of the bill. And the first is Pete Kitsmiller with the Automobile Dealers Association. Pete, welcome back to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Peter Kitsmiller. I'm the president of the Maryland Automobile Dealers Association. We represent 300 franchised new car and truck dealers across the state of Maryland. We're here today in opposition to House Bill 60. I want to just touch on a couple of points. Number one, this is the most critical year that we've had with regards to the sale of electric vehicles and to try to get mass adoption of electric vehicles. For the first time, starting January 1, we are going to have electric vehicles across every vehicle segment. We have 4 or 5 electric pickups before the end of the year. There are going to be multiple SUVs available that are going to be fully electric. So this is the time to really step on the gas, for lack of a better term, to help sales. And Maryland has a role to play there. I think the state of Maryland certainly does. And we look forward to working with the committee and with the sponsor to develop policies and to help expand and to speed up the mass adoption of electric vehicles, because I think that's what the goal of all these bills are. However, we do not believe that House Bill 60 will have that intended impact. It's unclear. I mean, and I haven't seen the amended, the sponsor talked about an amended version. I haven't seen that yet, but it's very unclear in the bill as to which vehicles and how much the charge will be for each vehicle. Our numbers, and I think the manufacturers who will follow me probably have more specific numbers. We think it's up to 40% of the new vehicles sold in Maryland will be subject to some version of this fee based on the original bill that we looked at. If you look at the fiscal note on page 5, under one of the scenarios, it lays out that the first year the revenues collected, which would basically be a tax on purchasing new vehicles, will be $62.5 million the first year, going up every year after that. And there are other different scenarios in there which are less, but again, it's not very clear as to which vehicles it applies to. And again, I come back to one last point. The EPA rating of a vehicle is one factor. This bill ignores 3 very important factors. If you take just an easy example, vehicle A.
Pete, if you could wrap up your 2 minutes.
So just in closing, I mean, while the intentions may be good, this will not speed up the adoption of electric vehicles. There's a lot of other things that will, and for those reasons, we'd ask for an unfavorable report.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll hear from Joshua Fisher, also signed up in opposition. You have 2 minutes, Joshua.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Josh Fisher, and I'm with the Alliance for Automotive Innovation. We represent the vehicle manufacturers producing 99% of the cars and light trucks sold in the U.S., as well as Tier 1 suppliers and other technology companies in the auto space. Delegate Frazier Hidalgo has been a strong champion for electric vehicles, and we appreciate his efforts to promote EV adoption in Maryland. However, I am here today to express our opposition to House Bill 60. We've always supported Maryland's efforts to fund electric vehicle incentive programs, EV charging infrastructure build out, and a host of other policies that will spur electric vehicle adoption. But we're strongly opposed to the establishment of an auto fee-based tax regime for 3 reasons. First, Maryland businesses and families rely on trucks, SUVs, and full-size cars for their livelihood and family needs every day. House Bill 60 is essentially a tax on vehicles that many people need for their daily lives. Our initial estimate of the bill as introduced showed that about 46% of all model year 22 vehicles would be subject to an average of about $600 in tax. Obviously, we haven't seen the updated amendment, so that's what we saw in the original bill. Now, the revenue collected from this segment provides the vast majority of money that's going to be needed for the rebate in the proposal. However, unlike a gas tax where everybody pays a small amount at the time of fill-up, this one segment of your constituents are going to be saddled with a very large fee. Now, proponents would argue that car buyers can choose to purchase a more efficient vehicle, but this ignores the fact that someone has to pay this fee to keep this fee-based structure in balance. If nobody's paying the fee, there's no money for the rebate. It also ignores that there's a potential that the fee applies to the more efficient vehicle option, depending on the design and implementation of the fee-based. Second, we think there are better policy options out there. Instead of a fee-based scheme, we would encourage Maryland to adopt a low carbon fuel standard. A low carbon fuel standard not only supports EVs, but can also further reduce emissions from vehicles that are already on the road. Properly structured, low carbon fuel standard reduces the carbon intensity of gas and diesel fuel, either directly by funding a low carbon intensity alternative, such as an EV, or
if you could start to wrap up, Josh, the committee would
and then
appreciate
one more thing here. Consumers could buy a used vehicle, but then you're still getting a less efficient vehicle on the road. Fee-based is just not going to drive the correct outcome that we all need here. We all support EV adoptions. We think there's better policies out there and would ask for an unfavorable report on HB 60. Thank you.
Okay, and the final witness in opposition is Mike O'Halloran. Mike, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. Good to see you this afternoon. For the record, my name is Mike O'Halloran on behalf of the Mid-Atlantic Petroleum Distributors to express our concerns with House Bill 60. Look, I won't take long. You heard some valid points with regards to costs from auto dealers and manufacturers. Our members' opposition is fairly straightforward. You know, their customers drive vehicles that will be subject to this new fee. But more to the point, drivers of electric vehicles, which would benefit from this fee, do not pay gas taxes that go towards funding our state's roads and bridges. So not only are they not paying for Maryland's infrastructure via the state's gas tax, but they'll get rebates to buy those vehicles that don't contribute to upkeep of roads and bridges. So, you know, this is part of a broader discussion, I think, about, you know, electric vehicles versus gas combustion vehicles and the issue of fairness and how we go about developing these policies. So I appreciate the committee's attention and respectfully request an unfavorable report.
Okay, thank you very much. Before I recognize Delegate Boyce, Josh, what was that low fuel? What was that you had were talking about?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. It's a commonly referred to as a low carbon fuel standard. States like California and Washington State have either implemented or begun it. States like Minnesota, Michigan, New York are all exploring it. And so what it really does, it does a couple things, right? If we're trying to reduce GHG and criteria emissions, one, we need to clean up the fuel that's used in the transportation system. A low carbon fuel standard helps do that, and it helps generate revenue for the state that can then be reinvested.
What is a low carbon fuel?
Well, it incentivizes refiners, folks who generate the fuel to clean up the fuel. Trust me, it's very technical and you need somebody smarter than me to explain the details to you, but it helps, it provides credits to refiners and other folks who generate the fuel to clean up the carbon intensity of the fuel that then goes into these vehicles that are, you know, used on road. So it helps reduce the carbon intensity of fuel that's burned in conventional vehicles. And through that credit generating scheme, the state generates revenue that can then be reinvested into EV infrastructure or other policy areas.
Do you have any links on this you could send me? I'm curious about this, and I don't want to use up the time of the committee on this one thing, but I'm interested in seeing what that is because I've never really heard about it.
Yeah, absolutely. We can provide you that info.
Okay, terrific. Delegate Boyce has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I wanted to go back to Josh. Before your time ended, you talked about EPA's not being the only factor to consider. Can you go into the other two that you were trying to get into?
I'm sorry, I don't think I understand that.
I think that was me.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's the wrong person. Sorry, Josh.
Yeah.
No problem. Yeah. So the point I was getting to is this standard basically takes a gram per mile, and the higher grams per mile it emits, the more it's going to be penalized. The point is there are a lot more factors than just what the EPA rating is. Number one is the work done. What kind of work is the vehicle doing? Number two, how many miles is the vehicle driving? And what vehicles, if any, it's replacing? Because what everybody has to remember is the biggest issue right now, electric vehicles are coming and that's great. But right now it's old versus new. If you're driving a 2015, whatever it is, and you replace it with the same model that's 2022, it is dramatically 30 or 40% cleaner than what was going on before. So if you take a very simple example, vehicle A under this bill, vehicle A emits 300 grams rating, Vehicle B is 400 grams. Vehicle B pollutes more. And so under this bill, it would receive a higher fee, or receive a fee, and the other one would not. Stop and think about it. Those vehicles emit exactly the same amount of emissions if they're sitting in the driveway, not driving. So if the higher polluting vehicle drives less miles, it pollutes less. If it's carrying 6 people every time it drives, as opposed to vehicle A, which has a lower rating, it only carries 1. So again, there are a lot more factors that go into this than just just the EPA rating. And again, I think it's very unclear as to how it's going to apply. And so that's where our concern comes from. There are things that the state needs to do with regards to the charging infrastructure. We've done a pretty good job compared to a lot of other states, but there's more that we need to do, especially in light of the fact that these sales are going to take off. They are going to increase. The question is, can we get them to increase the most they can and as quick as they can? And that's where I think picking the right policies are very, very important.
Thank you.
Delegate Healy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This is very quick. I just wanted to ask Mike O'Halloran. It's an unusual name. Do you have family in Scranton, Pennsylvania?
No, ma'am, I do not have family in Scranton, Pennsylvania, hometown of our president. He'd like to think it's from Delaware, but we all know he's actually from Scranton. But no, I do not have family from Scranton.
Okay, never mind. My very first best friend in the world was Ellen O'Halloran.
South side of Chicago and Stuyvesant Town, New York.
Okay. All right. Well, I believe that is the end of the public hearing for House Bill 60. Thank you very much, one and all. We will proceed to the last bill of the afternoon, House Bill 195. Delegate Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colleagues, I have before you today HB 195. It's Marine Contractors License, Performance and Services. If it sounds familiar, we've had it. This will be the third time. In 2020, it passed committee and passed the House unanimously, but got caught up in the shortened session with COVID. 2021, it passed the committee and the House unanimously, I believe, and got caught up in the feud between the Hatfields and the McCoys. So it didn't quite make it out of the Senate. But what I have you today is the same bill that we put in for this will be the third year. And this bill allows us the county and municipal employees to be able to perform marine contracting jobs at the same level that the state employees are able to do this. In this part of the last year, the committee in the environmental subcommittee spent considerable time modifying this bill to reflect recommendations of the Chesapeake Bay Foundation and the Department of Environment. The bill changed for granting county and municipal employees the ability to work on a broad spectrum of tasks to grant specific tasks as recommended. Some of these tasks were routine maintenance and repair of tidal impound dikes, agricultural drainage ditches repairs, roadside drainage ditches repaired, outlets for roadside drainage repairs, and other activities that were deemed de minimis by the Marine Contractors Board. The routine maintenance and repair of existing shore erosion control structures will still require employees to have a license. The bill before you today is in the same as it was passed out of the committee last year. I have I have one witness in favor, and I have one witness from CBL that I've had discussions with today, and we may have a amendment that would be amenable to both of us. I haven't seen it yet. That may make them favorable with an amendment. So that's the bill for today, and hopefully we can move it through this year and get it to the finish line.
Okay, Delegate Clark, you have also signed up in favor of Shannon Nazal. Shannon, are you with us? If so, welcome to the committee, and you have 2 minutes.
I am. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, and thank you, Chair Barve, Vice Chair Stein, and committee members. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all today. For the record, I'm Shannon Nazal, and I'm the Director of Parks and Recreation for Calvert County. In addition to representing the interests of Calvert, I'm also speaking on behalf of the Maryland Association of Counties Parks and Recreation Affiliate, or MACPRA. Both Calvert County and MACPRA are in full support of House Bill 195. Thanks to the hard work of Delegate Clark, this bill, as he mentioned, passed unanimously in the House in both the 2020 and 2021 session. Last year, we worked closely with Delegate Clark, the Maryland Department of Environment, and the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and had many conversations on a resolve that would meet the need of all organizations involved, which we continue at this time as well. As the active legislation currently allows, counties and municipalities are the only agencies that do not enjoy the privileges of exemption from marine contractor license requirements, which puts a great deal of financial burden on local governments, as well as an issue of timely rectification of safety concerns. With this current bill, it allows agencies such as mine throughout the state to complete repairs and perform routine maintenance without a license. As an example, our agency had a floating dock vandalized at one of our piers and non-motorized launches. This repair could have been completed with materials easily purchased at a hardware store by our current staff. Instead, we were forced to utilize a marine contractor for the work, spending over $2,400 on this de minimis repair. It is not the goal of local governments to negatively impact the Chesapeake Bay and its watersheds, as Calvert County is surrounded on 3 sides by waters of the Chesapeake Bay and the Patuxent River. It's a shared goal to protect our precious watershed. These waters offer so much to our community's environment and overall health to our region, and we understand the need for proper vetting of those who are doing intrusive work to the watersheds. But passing of this bill would allow local governments to complete routine maintenance and repairs that are low risk without the need to obtain a licensed marine contractor, and provides a compromise on the licensure itself by lifting fees to local government agencies. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to your favorable report.
Okay, I'm going to take the one opponent, who is Robin Clark with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and then we'll go to questions. So Robin, welcome back to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. As you heard from the bill sponsor and the proponent, we are in conversations with both about a way forward on this legislation. We did oppose the legislation last year. We appreciate the committee's consideration and the bill coming in an amended fashion. The marine contractor license is the way to educate oneself such that an individual, whether it's a county government employee or a private marine contractor, can work in the wetlands while protecting the wetlands. And our 2 ongoing concerns with this bill are that it would create an exemption for any county government employee performing any work deemed de minimis by the Marine Contractor Board. But the Marine Contractor Board, if they're coming up with a list of tasks that will be de minimis, will not have the ability to consider the location of that task. And the location is of the utmost importance relative to whether it's in a tidal wetland or not. We are working with the proponents on 2 particular ways forward. One is to create a meaningful path to licensure for county government employees, which doesn't seem as accessible to them as even members of the public, as even members of the staff of the Chesapeake Bay Foundation at this point. And the second is to give more definition to what is de minimis. For example, an activity that wouldn't otherwise require a permit, or also an activity that wouldn't otherwise expand the footprint of the structure that's already there. So 2 suggestions that we would be happy to work with the committee and subcommittee on as this bill moves through. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions for the sponsor, or any of the witnesses? No? Wow, okay, well, got off easy there, Jerry. You got off easy.
Yep.
Okay, that ends the public hearing for House Bill 195, and it ends the public hearing for today. Announcements.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair.
Go for it, Marvin.
HRP, Housing and Real Property Subcommittee, is meeting at 2:25, which is 5 minutes from now.
Okay, anyone else?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, go ahead, Brooke.
the Land Use and Ethics Subcommittee will just have a short organizational meeting on Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Thanks.
Okay, the vice chair had his hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. The Environment Subcommittee will meet at 2:30.
2:30, okay. Any other subcommittee announcements? Any announcements from anybody else? Okay, seeing none, meeting adjourned. Behave yourselves, people.
Bye-bye.